Hey everyone, it's Mari. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here today with another project for the Vicki Boutin design team. This is the project that I'm going to be creating here for you today. And I'm going to be starting off here with some of the foundations paper. And I'm going to scribble out some of the blue and green crayons from the art crayon collections. I wasn't really sure what colors exactly that I wanted to use of the art crayons, so I'm just kind of like scribbling a bunch of colors down onto my piece of plastic packaging over on the side of my table there. I am going to go ahead and activate those pigments with a little bit of water with my distress sprayer and my paintbrush here. And I am going to be using the Vagabond paper today from the collection, from the Storyteller collection. And that really was the inspiration for the color palette that I wanted to use today. I wasn't exactly sure, how much green, how much blue, how much of the pink tones and so on that I wanted on my project. So I just kind of played with it, and this is kind of a little journey as we're going to go through this process today. So I wanted to create an area here kind of a little bit to the right of center on my cardstock, on my foundations paper, and that's kind of the general area where I wanted to put my photo. I just picked up some of that pigment with another piece of plastic packaging, and went ahead and applied that using the kissing technique with that packaging onto my paper there. Just putting a little bit more water onto my foundations paper, lifting the paper up and letting that color and pigment flow across the paper, and just having fun applying the color and just getting a base down on my paper where I can go ahead then and build the rest of my project. I'm just going to go ahead and splatter some of that watered down pigment onto my layout as well. And every once in a while, I'm going to pick up some of the excess moisture off of my paper and just continue to build the layers. And in that way, I will get some depth in the color and create some dimension and some interest in that way just by continuing to splatter, add a little bit more pigment, add some more water, and so on and so forth. And that's all I'm doing here. So as I'm playing around with the different colors, I'm also kind of thinking in the back of my head where I want my photo to go. And I'm showing you that Vagabond paper there and all of the different colors that are in that paper. It's absolutely beautiful. And I am going to be using little torn bits of that paper with my photo. So here I'm just going in, I'm going to add a little bit of pink and purple together. And once I've got that mixed, I'm thinking I think that's not quite the right tone that I want for the project. And so I am going to go ahead and mix up a couple of other colors here. I'm going to mix some of the pink and a little bit of the really light coral and a little bit of white together with that and get that going onto the layout as well. So you can see here, I'll just scribble that down onto another piece of packaging and mix that up. Super easy to do this, and the pigments are so pretty and they look so cool when they're layered on top of each other. And I will show you a close-up here as the process continues so that you can see what the color looks like on the paper as it is layered and more of the pigment is added on there. So just looks really cool. And I just am going to continue to add some splatters with the larger and smaller brushes. And here you can just see I'm lifting up that packaging and letting that pink pigment drip on there. And I will go ahead and pick up some of that excess moisture so that you can just barely see a little bit of pink. I didn't want the pink to be too dominant. And actually, I'm going to add a bunch more layers of color as the process continues so that you can barely actually even see the pink by the time I'm finished here. So it's kind of how it goes when you're working with mixed media as you continue to add layers. Now, that Vagabond paper is just one of my favorites from the Storyteller collection. I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful on this side, but it's also got that gorgeous tone-on-tone navy design on the back, which is also very, very lovely. And what my idea was is to rip these into strips and then use those strips to the left of my photograph. And I just really love the texture that's on the paper in the design. And I loved just the idea of creating a little bit more texture with it as well by tearing it. Now I want one side of the paper to be straight. So I'm just going to add, just going to go ahead and trim off those papers with my trimmer, just so that it's a little bit easier to layer them on top of each other in that way. And here, and in a little bit here, you'll see how I'm going to connect these papers together to create kind of an embellishment to the left of my photograph. But I just love the colors that are in the Vagabond paper, and you can just see how that was the inspiration for the color of the crayons that I chose and the colors that I included in the background, so that it's not just sort of like a monochromatic color scheme. There's a lot of different colors going on with those crayons, and I just thought that was super pretty and complementary with this Vagabond paper. So I really love this paper so much. I just think, like, look at all of those interesting different types of print on the paper. So gorgeous. Now I did run my paper through my laminator so that you can see it's really nice and flat. And now what I wanted to do is take one of the Storyteller stencils and add a little bit of the silver glaze medium to the background. So this is one of the creative effects. It's a gorgeous silver. It actually dries back so that it doesn't look like super shiny silver, at least not how I applied it. But I just love it. I love the effect that it gives on the layout. And I like the idea of circles. I thought that was just a really nice texture to add that's going to be different from the elements that are otherwise going to be added to the layout. So I'm just dry brushing this on. So my stencil brush is dry. I'm just picking this up and swirling it around so that it's nice and thin, and then stenciling it on in that way so that you just end up with a really light layer. So it's not on there really thick or heavy, but it still adds some texture and a little bit of shine, and it dries super, super fast. It took no time at all for that to dry. And so now I'm just taking a little bit of washi tape from my stash, and I'm going to stick all of those papers together. So I'll just pick those all up in a strip. And now I'm going to take those over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to stitch through those a couple of times, and it's just going to create a little bit of extra texture on the paper, and it's also going to make those papers all stick together. So that's an easy way, a really cool and fun and easy way to make an embellishment out of pattern paper that you just really love. And you'll see how I'm going to curl up the edges of that paper to reveal the navy on the back a little bit later in the process here. So now I'm just going to add some more color. So I decided that the background is just a little too bright. The greens and blues are too bright, and I want to tone that down. So what I did was I added some black crayon to the really dark teal crayon, and I splattered that on. I'm applying it with my brush, and you'll just see me kind of mess around with it until I get the look that I want. And I'm going to add a little bit more of the blue in there, and I'll splatter that on and tap it in, and then I'll add some more water. And yeah, it's just fun. I love working with the mixed media in this way. These art crayons are so fun. They layer so beautifully. Love adding the splatters over top of the areas where the color, the paint or the pigment is just flat. And I think it just kind of adds that extra dimension and interest to your layout. Now, I did not add any gesso to my foundations paper at all. It is a really great paper. It's super thick, and it takes the color so well, and the water so well, as long as you don't add a ton. And it's just fantastic. So I did not add any gesso here at all. So here you can see I decided that I wanted to add some pigment to the corners. So diagonally, the top left corner and the bottom right corner. And the nice thing about doing sort of like that diagonal is it draws your eye from the top of the layout all the way through the center to the bottom. And because I was kind of going almost like with a center area for my photos, that's just kind of like a really logical way to continue with your design. And I wanted to create more of those splatters in the corners, and I wanted to also add just like a little bit of the green and blue in there. And so you can see how this kind of just tones down that bright green and bright blue a little bit, and just kind of, it adds a lot of interest. And I don't know if you noticed, but I actually tapped in some of that color in the corners with my finger. So I had the pigment on my finger and I just kind of like tapped it around. And there was kind of like little pools of pigment and water in the corners. And I just tapped my finger into it and moved it around in that way. And you get like a really nice soft look when you do that. So I like that effect. Now, these are all the different pieces now that I'm going to use for matting and detailing my photo. So I added my two 2x2 black and white photos to those little frames. And that's one of the die cut ephemera pieces from the collection. And I'm also going to add a tag from the die cuts to my photo layers here. I am adding another strip of that vagabond paper, which is navy back there, and another strip you can see just underneath that vellum butterfly. That's all vagabond paper. So it's all the same sheet of paper. And I've sewn on it. I've sewn on the paper and torn it and just done a bunch of things to make it look more interesting. So I'm just looking at the placement of where things are at this point and checking out where I want everything to be. I love that vellum butterfly. I thought it was perfect because it has a lot of the same patterns and colors that are in Vagabond. And I also took another little corner strip from the Vagabond paper and I'm going to add it up to that top corner. I thought about adding that bird, but I actually changed my mind and I add some chipboard up there instead, but you'll see that when I go ahead and get to that stage. But I think what I was saying earlier too is I added sewing with my sewing machine to all of the little different bits of paper that are part of the photo mat area there, including I also actually sewed through the center of that vellum butterfly as well. Now I want to kind of join all of these bits together in one piece, except for the strip of Vagabond paper that I sewed together there, the strips. I'm going to actually adhere that on with a little bit of craft foam. And I wanted to take my distressing tool and just rough up the edges a little bit more, just because you can see like this really has a distress look to it, obviously. And I'm going to just kind of curl the edges of that torn paper and just really make it look as interesting as possible and dimensional. And then you can just see how this is all going to come together. And I think I'm just grabbing some craft foam at this point. I'm going to go ahead and put that behind the patterned paper there, and I will get that adhered down. I wasn't too concerned about cutting off all of the threads from the machine stitching that I did, just because I thought the threads that are hanging just look kind of interesting and neat as well on the layout. So you will see that there is a little bit of thread kind of here and there on the layout, just from that sewing that I did. I'm just going to add a little bit of liquid adhesive behind there, but I'm going to attach my photos with some craft foam and then just a little bit of really sticky tape runner. So I'm just grabbing a little bit more of that craft foam. I'll take the release paper off the back and then go ahead and stick that down. So yeah, I love that. I think that the Vagabond paper can be used in so many different ways. I am totally in love with that paper and I will use it on other layouts. I do have more than one sheet of it, which makes me super happy. I love the effect of that paper. I think it's super cool. Now you're just seeing here, I'm going to curl up the very edge, the torn edge of that paper to reveal the navy on the back. And I just think it just kind of makes that paper pop a little bit more over on the edge. And you can just see the distressed nature of it. I'm going to be journaling on this layout. I didn't do the journaling on camera or in the video. I often don't do that. I often like to keep my journaling private that I add onto my layout, so that sometimes you'll see my layouts, they won't have journaling on them. That's because I do it off camera. And so just in this layout here, I'm going to just be talking about, staying sane during the pandemic and just really the ways that I have managed to just sort of like maintain sort of like my calm, because I'm retired, I'm at home. I do a lot of design work, lots of crafting projects, that kind of thing. I'm in my craft studio all the time, every day, and it's just been my sanity for sure during this time. And so that's just what I'm going to be talking about here, and just like how grateful I am to be able to be at home and do what I love. And I just feel really, really super lucky. And so that's what I'll be journaling about for this project. So anyways, that tell your story is part of the chipboard, and the chipboard for this collection is absolutely gorgeous. So I wanted to kind of put the title piece up in that corner. I thought that was just interesting and a little bit different. And the circle sticker that says the best was from the cardstock sticker sheet. And that's also going to be part of the title, or, the focal point of what's going on in the journaling as well. And I just really like that. I thought the addition of another circle element with that's, considering the stencil that I used as circles, was just kind of interesting as well. Now, I did use a little tab sticker that's part of the sticker sheets. And I put that on one of the corners or the edge of the photos. And these puffy stars, you guys, these are just unbelievable. Like, I could have 1 million sheets of them and it would not be enough. They're so adorable, and there are so many different sizes on these little sheets of stickers, and they're just the perfect tiny little embellishment to finish off the layout. I am going to fussy cut a couple of butterflies from the butterfly paper and put those in a couple of different areas, and the layout is going to be finished, other than, like I said, that journaling that I'm going to add a little bit later. But there you can see the butterflies that I fussy cut and added in. So I really like how this turned out. I think it's super fun, very whimsical layout, lots of color, lots of texture, lots of detail, and it's just lots of fun. I think fun is the best word to describe it. The Storyteller collection is a stunner. So if you haven't checked it out, please make sure you check the description box below. I will have links to where you can find Vicki Boutin Storyteller and the products I used today. Have an amazing day. Stay safe, my friends, and I'll see you here next week for another video for Vicki Boutin.